Do we have Sheriff Chris Mathis from Carter County here? Good. It's your turn.
I'll probably move around a little bit. I'm pretty loud anyway, so it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to see General Staubus. It's always adjacent county working with him and our fellow folks from Bristol. Always have a great relationship. Just a brief moment about me. I started my law enforcement career in 1992 as a young police officer here in Johnson City. Worked my way up as a detective and finished my degree at East Tennessee State University, and was fortunate. I applied with all the acronyms: FBI, TBI, U.S. Marshal Service, DEA, ATF. I tell everybody NBA, NFL, everybody else that I could apply for because I wanted to be a federal agent. The United States Drug Enforcement Administration hired me after Quantico. I spent 7 years in South Florida, spent a year overseas, working in the Bahamas, and everybody says, oh, that was great. Well, there's no Walmarts in the Bahamas, so you ladies can relate. You know, if you got to have a Walmart close by. It wasn't all as cracked up to be, but still was nice. And spent a year working undercover, or 2 months working undercover in Europe, and I had the opportunity to come back home in 2006 and run for sheriff, and hopefully change the culture. Promoted the first 2 female lieutenants ever in the department. Hired the first 2 African Americans ever in the history of our department. So I'm big on diversity and changing the culture of Carter County and where we are today in 2013. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about the history of domestic violence. And any accounting majors in here? Anybody does bookkeeping for your employer? Reaganomics was called trickle-down economics. And this is kind of the thought process of when you listen to General Staubus talk. There's no accounting 101 that you can put a pen and paper to and sit down and put, well, domestic violence costs us this much, and be accurate. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. There's economic factors of a recent domestic violence case we worked in Carter County. Victim had come, husband was abusive, back and forth, arrest, get out, come back home, our cycle that we often see. This one had gotten very abusive to the point of life or death. Alcohol was involved, and I'll talk about some of these statistics here in a moment, but an economic factor that you don't figure in was the dynamics of the family. Can anybody tell me what the TV show was on in the 60s that was the epitome of the way the family was supposed to be set up, the family unit? Leave It to Beaver. Who said that? All right. I've got a few door prizes and gifts here. Look at here. Everybody likes a pothole. They're popular. Potholders are popular. So, just what you needed. Now is that stereotypical or what? Giving a potholder. Leave It to Beaver. Absolutely. You had the family unit. The TV show showed the mother, the father, the kids. Everybody was there. What TV show started changing that and saw something different? That's the one, but I'm going to talk about a little bit before that. All in the Family. I still had the unit there together, but I know some of the references, I know what you're making of. Who said the Brady Bunch? Right there. What was different about the Brady Bunch? A blended family. Yes, absolutely. Here's you a couple. Everybody needs nail files. Okay. So you got a blended family. On that family, you had 2 families coming together making one. What's another popular? It's on TV all the time still today. Law enforcement show.
NCIS?
No, it's been on for years.
Law and Order?
The Andy Griffith Show. Tell me that family wasn't dynamic. You had a single father with a little red-headed boy living with Aunt Bee. But the community helped take care of them. Today, the family dynamics are completely different. In this episode of Carter County Justice, as we would call it here, and to leave the names out to protect the innocent, but this is a lady that's living with her father-in-law. She's living with her husband. There's a child living there, a teenager. all living in one household. Primary income is the farm. You think 2013, there's not that many farmers around, but this is one of those cases that was still farming. Constant alcoholism. The father-in-law is up in his 90s. He's not able to work. The big dynamic for this family is that the father needed to be home. Home is where the domestic violence is occurring. Guess what? Home is where he goes to work every day. Tobacco crops, all the farming crops, everything that they did, they farmed, cut hay, everything they made a living for that family was based on that farm. What happens when he goes to jail? No work gets done. The farm falls. What happens if if you've got a garden and you're not tending to it? Your garden fails. Here was a case of constant back and forth. So we finally get an order of protection, but the family has to have him there on the farm. So the female has to leave to go out and be gone so dad can come home, which is actually to work. How messed up is that? The economics of that family, because they're looking at, hey, do we put up with the alcoholism? Do we put up with the domestic violence? Or do we starve to death? I've got a teenage kid going to school. Tell me the economic factors don't really factor in there. There's no way to put a dollar sign on that. End result of that case, they end up trying to work this out for a couple of weeks. They run into each other in the afternoon as he's leaving, she's coming home. They have an altercation. Alcohol's involved. He sticks a 12-gauge shotgun to himself and kills himself because he didn't want to go back to jail. That's how tragic it can be in these situations. Let me tell you about how it's changed. I can remember being a brand new young police officer in Johnson City when we didn't say you shall arrest. And I won't mention this officer's name because he's retired now, but I'll imitate him the best I can. But this officer talked a little different. And he always went to a call and he had to handle it like this. And he had to talk to him, now listen, you need to go in the other room. You need to stay away from her. We don't want to come back here. General Staubus, how many times have you heard that? If we have to come back here, somebody's going to jail. That was the way domestic violence was handled not that long ago, before laws stiffened. I literally remember, as a young, brand new officer, coming to a house on Christmas Eve. It's snowing, and we'd been there 3 times. And she said he had smacked her, but she didn't want him to go to jail. It was Christmas. Kids were coming over, all kinds of things they were going to have the next day. Just wanted him to go in the other room and leave her alone. And back in those days, you could try to, what was called HBO, handled by officer. Well, again, I was still in training. The senior officers were there. They're handling it. And on our 3rd time we went back there, I remember the senior officer going up and says, "Sir, can I talk to you just a minute?" He said, "Let's go back here in the back room." So he takes him back in the bedroom where the wife wanted him to go. And I heard a big thump. So I thought the officer was in a fight. So I come running. The other officers come. And the officer's stepping out of the door, closing the door. I said, "No, everything's okay." "Everything okay?" Yeah. So, "Ma'am, come over here just a minute." And this officer said, "Ma'am, if your husband gives you any more problems, you give us a call because we will take him to jail next time. But he decided to take a little nap." And you can read between the lines. Ain't doubt in my mind, he went back there and clubbed him and knocked him out. And that was domestic violence back in that day that was handled. The lady was happy. The officer, whatever altercation took place back there, but the guy took a little nap. And that's, unfortunately, officers probably handled a lot of situations the old school method and dealing with that. You can't do those things anymore. You can't say, well, you just go up the street and spend the night somewhere. Because so many times the wife and sometimes the spouse, I remember another situation where the wife begged us not to take him to jail. Well, we wasn't going to take him to jail. We was going to take her to jail. She had found out that he was cheating on her, and she come in, and the one lady got away, but she took her high heel shoe. He had about 50 red dots all over his face where that high heel shoe had just pounded his head. It's not always either or, but the economic side of one thing that's never factored in is when that other spouse goes to work or doesn't go to work, and they may be the only provider, who eats or who doesn't eat? Who pays the rent? Who puts gas in the car? And so forth. The couple of stats I want to go for you, talk to you a little bit about here. In Carter County, right now, I'll put ours up against anybody. How much would you say it takes to feed an inmate just for one day? $1,000 a day for one inmate? Ooh, it must be eating steak. Woo, I'm going to jail. A day. How cheap? Let me ask. Who's got a husband and kids? Nobody? Nobody wants to admit to having a husband and kids? You've got one. Oh, okay. So if you go feed how many kids you got? You got 2 kids. You get up in the morning, you're going to feed them breakfast. They get to go eat lunch, and then you feed them. What's it cost for you to feed one of those kids? Just one of them. Let's say the other one's off somewhere. You're going to feed that one kid today. How much do you need in your wallet to feed them? $20, $30. That's what it's going to cost to go to McDonald's and Chick-fil-A and decent meal. Real groceries. Okay. There's going to be a cost to it. In Carter County today, we are feeding inmates 3 meals a day for, let me double check it, because I got the new raw figure, $2.34 a day. I don't know that I can feed anybody any cheaper, but I run a full staff. We cook, we grow a garden, we do those things. So there's a cost related to everyone that goes to jail for $2.34 a day. Taking my total jail budget, which is about $3.2 million, and dividing it by 365, dividing it by a population of roughly 280 inmates. This is no tangibles. Just talking about in Carter County today, what it's costing to keep an inmate, about $40 a day is what it costs on our medical side to keep any inmate per day. I would guarantee we're one of the lowest places in the state, but there's a lot of intangibles that we're not talking about. Electric bill, water bill, those things that come out on the county side that's not figured in. Gasoline for an officer to do a transport. The car maintenance to do that. From the patrol side, the officers that are involved. So at a minimum, to house somebody in the Carter County Jail is $40 a day. And again, that's at feeding at $2.34, keeping our costs down with your labor and all the things that goes into that. Do you know how Tennessee ranks in the United States today in domestic violence? Anybody know? Consistently third. We're consistently in the top 5. Why is that? I think it goes back to what General Staubus was talking about. Part of the culture here of trying to change folks, how they look at it, their state of mind, how we proceed with things. But we are staying in the top 5. So what does that tell you? A lot of our calls that we respond to are related to domestic violence. In Tennessee last year, there was almost 42,000 victims, 41,708 victims of domestic violence. That's reported. Economically, how many unreported do you think goes on that's out there? Lost days of work. Doctor bills. Fell down the steps. That's the big one I hear. Oh, I was walking outside my house and I fell down. What's the dynamics of domestic violence? Again, talking about the household being the leave it to beaver as we used to think. It's not now. 50%, and I guess this is a weird statistic, but 50% of all domestic violence cases are not boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband and wife. 50% is from another family member, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, cousin. So what we're seeing with domestic violence is widely broadened. So who we're bringing in is tremendous. But 14.5% of all domestic violence cases in the state of Tennessee are part of the 100% part of all criminal cases. So nearly 1 out of every 5 or 6 calls that we go on is going to be a domestic violence related call. So you think about where you're paying for law enforcement. Somebody, when you see that officer going somewhere, there's probably about a 20% chance that he is going or she is going on a domestic related call. Where's those costs? The other half of my budget is another $3.5 million for running patrol cars, answering calls, and providing service. So you start looking at the dynamics there. 17% of those, the offenders that we arrest, drugs and alcohol are involved. Carter County just voted in liquor. Does that help us or hurt us? Everybody wants the tax revenue off of it, but now they can run down to the local liquor store, get tanked up, go home and beat hubby or mama. So where does it help or hurt? When we know that nearly 20, I think my mic's going, about 20% of those are alcohol and drug related. In Carter County last year, in 911, I just got these statistics. In 2011, the Carter County Sheriff's Office responded to 636 domestic violence calls in Carter County. The city of Elizabethton responded to 339. So that's nearly 1,000 calls for domestic violence in a county population that only has 60,000 people, less than 60,000. 2012, very accurate, 648 in the county and 362 in the city. Almost identical statistics, so it's consistent. 2013, we've answered already 384 with 206 in the city. We're right on target for being where we're going to be at consistently for the last 3 years. As far as arrests and victims, talking about people that actually have gone to jail, in 2011, there was 197 victims related to arrested cases. Compare that to about 1/3, 148 of those folks went to jail. 2012, 206, and then 146, 206 victims, 146 went to jail. 2013, we're right on the mark there with 68 and 51. We consistently are answering those calls. And I guess talking about the economic side of it, I can tell you statistically that you look at somebody that goes to jail automatically on a domestic violence, they're going to be in jail for a day. They're going to jail for 12 hours. So we know you're going to get that one-day cost for every person. And I don't know, General Staubus, you may be able to answer this. Do you know what the average stay is? Because I don't know, because I was trying to find out, of domestic violence. It may be that 12 hours and the case may be dismissed, the case may be out on probation, there may be a divorce and separation comes and they never have any more problems. Those that get put on probation often have a higher rate of folks that violate probation and come back. So they're doing a violation of probation because they failed a drug test or wouldn't get counseling or whatever they're supposed to do, they failed to do. So then they end up back in jail for 30 days on a first offense in Carter County, which was original charge being domestic violence. You see where this economic side of this pencil just keeps going and going and going. Energizer Bunny don't have nothing on the economic side of what crimes like domestic violence cost. I guess the last thing that I will tell you, we recently had a case of if you don't do something. Recently was contacted by victims organization who had been contacted by a family member. The aunt says, listen, or the sister of the victim says, my sister's in a very abusive relationship. She's not even allowed to go to work without the husband taking her. If she goes to lunch, he comes and gets her. She's the breadwinner. He doesn't work. He takes her, drives her with the kids, takes them to school, and sits out in the parking lot and waits on her to get off work. Takes her to lunch if she goes. She was smothered. He took her cell phone away from her. It was an extremely abusive relationship, verbally and somewhat physically. Could not separate herself. I got Johnson City because she worked at Johnson City, lived in Carter County. We got involved. We were able to actually infiltrate her business. And again, the business don't want this problems coming into their work. What does that do economically there? Now, you care about your employees to a degree, but hey, do I lose customers by you having, how many wants a creepy old guy sitting out in their parking lot of your business every day? So it starts becoming problems there. They don't want to fire her because they know she's the breadwinner. So fortunately for this employer, they cooperate. We actually sneak in, come in the back door, sit down with the boss, sit down to confirm this with her, that she feels like this. We orchestrate a phone call where she goes and says, hey, I'm not going to lunch. They're not letting me go to lunch today. I've got to stay in here and work. We sneak her out the back door, take her to Carter County, which is her residence. We get an order of protection, come back in and pull in with JCPD. When he went to lunch and comes back, and while we're sitting there waiting on him, we serve him with an order of protection. He shows his anger, basically throws down the car keys, the car leaves everything, and leaves walking. 2 days later, we able to get her that day, take her to a domestic violence shelter, get the kids. But she had to understand she had to walk off and leave her world. Her clothes, all the things that she had, we gave her an opportunity to escape, get help, had organizations going to help her. 2 days later, she has him come and get her. And now she's back living in that environment. That's the struggle the general talked about. We talk about dealing in law enforcement, and folks remain in that type environment. How do we help those? Again, when you start looking at the pencil and piece of paper on what does domestic violence cost us, and I guarantee if you raise your hand, either you've been a victim of domestic violence or you know somebody that has. It's not a hidden problem. It affects us all. The last thing that I will talk about related to domestic violence, and I'll take any questions from a law enforcement. This is something I'm passionate about. I'm fortunate. I was never a victim of domestic violence. I've never hit a woman, don't believe in hitting a woman, and believe that some families, like mine, I've been fortunate. I've not had to deal with that. But in saying that, a lot of families do. I want you to close your eyes just a moment. I'm going to go back to just want you to think about something. If you would, think about when you were a child. Think about having mom and dad or whoever was around whenever you were hurt your knee, you were upset, had a bad day at school, or even now. There's a place that you can go to. For me, it was my room. I was able to go in my room, close the door because it was safe. I didn't have to worry about the world. I didn't have to worry about being hit. I didn't have to worry about being hurt because my room was safe. You can open your eyes now. I hope you had a pleasant thought thinking about hopefully a place that you had for you that was safe. And I got this little scenario from the movie A Time to Kill. I know probably Barry Staubus has watched Time to Kill. It's a great lawyer movie during the closing arguments of the trial. But it makes you think about something when you close your eyes that you don't see color, you don't see race, you don't see religion, you don't see anything. And I say that in domestic violence because I remember having that, because I had a great nurturing mom and dad, grandparents, people that cared about me. But anytime I had a bad time, I could always go to that nice, safe room. And even when I go to my mom and dad's, I still sometimes go in that room and have my time. If you're a domestic violence victim, you probably don't have that place that you just thought of yourself, where you can go and know that you're safe. I'm on the board of Shepherd's Inn in Carter County. I'm on the board of the CHIPS Family Violence Center, which serves Carter, Unicoi, and Greene County. They have some here in Johnson City, every district, and I don't know what y'all have in Bristol. Safe Havens around here as well. What do y'all have? Abuse Alternative. Economically, those places struggle. They're there to be an advocate. I sit on the board of both. I've done fundraisers to help them, anything that I can do to try to help them survive year to year. In Unicoi County, the one that services Carter, Unicoi, and we have a thrift store. If you're downtown Unicoi, go by that thrift store. Buy something. We do discount prices, everything, just to keep the doors open so we can keep our houses open where people can go to on those rare occasions that we can get them to go somewhere and get away from that offender. I hope I've made you understand a little bit the wide, I guess it's just not Economics 101 when you're talking about domestic violence. But from prosecution to incarceration, to mom or dad having to get up and put meals, food on the table when that offender goes away, or sometimes goes away for a long time and start rebuilding their life. It's a fine line of how we handle it, how we get there, so that family can be productive, healthy. And then you throw in the great term of emotions, because they still love that man that beat them or that woman that beat them. Fathered their children. We sometimes, and I use this saying from all the way back from college, justice is blind, let us be our eyes. We in law enforcement try to do a good job, and our prosecutors are great. I have to brag on Barry. I would steal him over here if we could. But there's a hard-nosed approach that sometimes we have to put compassion and things aside and our emotions aside more so, and try to do what's right and prosecute these people even against their will. Help those who can't help themselves. But I'll hush, but I wanted to make you aware of what our officers see, how much we're responding. And the one thing is, I'm on the board of directors. I'm very proud to be elected. Hope to be maybe actually be president of the association last year. But over the last 4 or 5 years, we have worked on the SAVIN program. That's SAVIN, SAVIN, if you want to look up Tennessee Sheriff's Association and SAVIN. But through legislation, we now manage a domestic violence callback center through APRIS, is the computer company. But 95 counties in the state of Tennessee, 93 are now either doing this or set to do it when they get their program in. So 93 and 95 counties actually have a callback. You can actually get a callback from computer saying that Chris Mathis has just been released from jail. You can check on the offender now and know whether they've been released, and that call comes back, and keep up with it. So we're very proud, and again, hundreds of thousands of dollars has went into this program that you all will never know about or never see. The general is, with the District Attorneys Association, those guys have supported it. But those are things that you'll never know about, that we're making efforts financially to support the victims, and it's geared towards victims of domestic violence.
Sheriff Mathis, thank you so much.